How many of the young people here know that there's a new movie coming out next year called Star Wars? Ever hear that? It's episode 7. What you may not know is that a long, long time ago, yes. Hey. Back in the summer of 1977, there was another movie called Star Wars. In fact, it was the first one. It was episode 4. I was never good at math, so don't get me going on chronology. And this movie obsessed most young adolescent teenagers, particularly boys. And the protagonist in my novel is no different. He's obsessed with Star Wars. His name is Merc, and that's short for Mercury. His sister's name, which I only mentioned once, I think, in what I'm about to read, is Jupy, short for Jupiter. So they've got kind of hippie parents, right? Their mother, they live above the bar called Queequegs. And they struggle to run this bar. The father has abandoned the family, so the mother and various helpers struggle to run this bar in a town much like Baltimore, renamed Patapsco City, in a neighborhood much like Fells Point, redubbed Quaker Cove. So this is the summer that changes the life of young Merc when his one-armed cousin from Appalachia comes into town seeking medical treatment. And this is an early chapter. This is the second chapter, and this is what introduces the 13-year-old Merc. That summer, I wore a terry cloth white bathrobe every day until it dirtied as brown as the sands of Tatooine. My mother bought it for me when I, quite unexpectedly, asked for a bathrobe. Not the typical request from a 13-year-old in the summer of slime, skateboards, and fire-breathing 20-inch Godzillas. You never wore one before, she said. I shrugged. Besides, it's June. It's already hotter than the hinges of hell. I dropped my chin to my chest and rested both hands on my hips, thumbs forward. She sighed, lit a cigarette, and gave me the once-over. Boys your age, she said, it must be total bedlam in there, and she nudged my head as she passed toward the stairs. If I have a sec before the bar opens, she called back while descending, I'll run up to Epstein's and see what they have. Later that morning, my mother brought back a blue and green plaid cotton bathrobe with shiny black lapels. Mom, I said plain white. This isn't plain white at all. Oh, baby, you'll look very dashing in this one, and it was on sale. My body collapsed like a supernova. She gently lifted my chin with a finger curved into a pirate's hook. What's wrong, Merc? I said white. It has to be white. Voice? She said sternly. My chin anchored itself again on my chest. I tried to growl a low rumbling sigh like Chewbacca, but it came out more like a fake belch. Besides, with your aunt and Nixie coming next week, I thought you might prefer something a little bit more decent. I kicked at a dust bunny that gnawed on the side of my keds. I had forgotten how my aunt and cousin were coming to Pat City to stay with us. Where were they going to sleep in this small place? On the back fire escape? We only had 2 rooms, with Mom in one and Jupy in the other. Jupy, who used the fire escape more than the alley door. My mother preferred that we not use the front entrance during bar hours. I slept on the pullout that sandwiched into a sofa in daytime. I frumped toward the small kitchenette in the back of the apartment. Fine, here's the receipt, she said, pinching a piece of white paper between middle and forefinger, the way she holds a cigarette. I tried, but go back to Epstein's and exchange it. I got to get Clarice going in the kitchen. Before you do anything, mister, get the produce from Mr. Connie when he comes through. Soon the old Arabber's call sailed through the back alley. Holler, holler, till my throat gets sore. If it weren't for the pretty girls, I wouldn't have to holler no more. I say, watermelon, watermelon, get 'em red to the rind, lady. Mr. Connie sung about cantaloupes as if they were lovers, Silver Queen corn as if they were dreams, Brandywine tomatoes as if they were gems. Some summer mornings I would go down to the stables near the pier and help him and the other Arabers groom their horses, hitch up their painted wagons, and load produce off boats from the other side of the bay. Then they fanned out across town with horses named Jughead, Caboose, Miss Shirley, and Sparkle Pearl. Most of the Arabs put straw hats on their horses' heads with slits in the top for long ears to fit through. But Mr. Connie bobby-pinned an old Elite Gauls cap to his horse, Curveball, matching the weather one he wore from his days in the Negro Leagues. All berries, redder than wine and just as fine, all berries. Bells around Curveball's neck jangled in time with Mr. Connie's call. Morning, Mr. Mercury. Morning. It's been a while since you've been down to the stables. Yeah, I guess so. Can't teach you the trade if you ain't be more regular. Don't know if I want to be an Arabber. Mr. Connie said, removing his ball cap to reveal coal hair dusted with ash. What is it then you want to be? I don't know. Better figure her out. You're getting big. By your age, I was already perfecting my curveball. Guess I'm not perfect with anything. Oh, don't go saying that, Mr. Mercury. Everybody's good at something. Mr. Connie snapped open 2 brown paper bags and started filling them with corn and tomatoes. I got the fruit and vegetables my mother wanted and took a timid minute to feed Curveball a sugar cube, the horse's leathery speckled tongue stretching out almost as long as my forearm. Come dance with Silver Queen from Eastern Shore with ears so keen. Come dance, I've got cohorn. As soon as Mr. Connie and Curveball continued along the alley, I tore up Broadway to Epstein's with the box containing the wrong bathrobe under my arm. Miss Louise stood in the storefront window dressing a mannequin in a blue waistcoat with tails and red and white striped pants, which bunched at the plastic man's ankles like an accordion, his lifeless, hairless crotch announcing neither he nor she. Still, for some reason, it embarrassed me, and I turned my head just as Miss Louise spotted me and waved, so I worried that she thought I had dissed her. I walked the length of the storefront past dolls sharing a picnic, a child mannequin flying a kite hooked by fishing line caught in perpetual wind, and a rainbow of towels stacked in a Roy G. Biv arc. Morning, Merc, said Mr. Epstein from behind the register when I walked in. A bell above the door jingled. What's the good word, he always asked. Nothing, I always replied, wanting to counter with something more clever like gnarly, copacetic, or zoinks, but never able to think quick enough. Where are your bathrobes? Back and to the left between men's and the other bathroom items. But your mother was in earlier for one. I have an exchange. No problem. Just bring it to me when you find what you want. I zigzagged through a maze of tabletops and shelves stocked with hair dryers, socks, bleach, work boots, transistor radios, curlers, aspirin, Noxzema, bromo-seltzer, model railroad gear, walkie-talkies, kickballs, corn dishes with corn stickers, random mugs and dishes, and collectible mirrors with names of rock and roll bands like Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, and Grateful Dead. In the back of the store, I found another version of the blue and green plaid bathrobe that my mother picked out, along with burgundy silk robes, quilted robes in gold and black, moss green Nikon tricot with celery green piping, the terry cloth robes in vivid stripes like sticks of gum advertised by that psychedelic zebra, tickle your tongue with fruit stripe gum, cherry stripe, lemon stripe, orange stripe, lime stripe, not one plain white robe. Then, over in women's, I saw it, as simple as a pillar of salt and large enough to fit me comfortably, something a grandmother would wear. Too long, but otherwise perfect with matching belt. A rose embroidered over the left breast could easily be fixed. I took it in the box to the front counter where a fan oscillated breeze across American flags on pointed sticks, white plumed pens like the one used to sign the Declaration, and a note on the register reminding customers that the state sales tax was now 5%. Now let's see here, Mr. Epstein said. He took the blue and green plaid monstrosity out of the box and hesitated while comparing it to what I brought to the counter. It looked as if he weighed a peacock in one hand with a polar bear in the other. I take it this robe is for you? Yes, sir. But this robe is for women, Merc. See, even it ties right side over left, like a lady's. What I mean, it's for her, my mother. I don't need a bathrobe, so I want to exchange it for one she needs. Why, that's mighty sweet. But this is way too big for Donna. Let me help you pick one out. No, 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 no. Mr. Epstein stopped in his tracks before emerging from behind the counter. He smoothed his mustache with a finger. I mean, she likes him that way, baggy, like a blanket. Well, okay, we can exchange it, but you keep the new receipt just the same and come back again if you need to. Mr. Epstein rung up the bathroom and gave me back $4.50 since it was cheaper. Don't shy away from bringing it back. We're open through the weekend, but not on Monday for the holiday. I thanked Mr. Epstein and dashed out, averting my eyes from half-naked Uncle Sam in the window with Miss Louise kneeling before him, her cheek pressed against a lustrous crotch while she fiddled with the striped pants waistband. Officer Burt stood on the corner with his cap pushed high on his forehead, arguing with Sal the bookie. Gus the barber swept hair into the gutter that caught a current of hydrant water down toward the harbor. Stevedores streamed into Quaker Cove for food and beer on their lunch break from unloading stacks of aluminum ingo, bales of steel wire, and slabs of scrap iron. Deckhands working the tugs doused handkerchiefs in pails of water, then tied them around their necks. A blue haze lingered that shrouded points across the harbor in a gauzy film. Folks crowded Broadway back down toward the Cove's pier and the bar. Most of them I knew, but I did not stop to say hello to anyone. I needed to get back to the small apartment over the bar where we lived. Entering the bar's alley door, I leaped up the back stairs without greeting Clarice, who paused from flipping burgers on a flat grill to say, "Good day, Mr. Merck." Upstairs, I took pinking shears from my mother's sewing kit to shorten the robe by about 20 inches. I pictured the size of the fire-breathing Godzilla advertised on TV as my guide and chewed into the terry cloth, leaving behind a shark-toothed edge. I slipped on the robe and pulled the dangling threads off by the crummy hem job, snipping off a few strands with the pinking shears. Still, the edges frayed. Standing on tiptoes to fully see myself in the bathroom mirror, I saw that the robe's edge was a few inches higher on one side, so I returned to the kitchen table to even it up. Terry cloth pellets dusted the floor around me like snow. Back in the bathroom, I reevaluated my workmanship and decided, despite a straggly edge, job complete. I cinched the belt tight around my waist, below my belly, and blasted out the lapels so that I did not look so fat. I thought some liquid paper might cover the pink rose, and that could wait. More important matters remained. I dug through Uncle Jules's old farmy footlocker that I used for a toy chest, chucking aside a slinky bent out of shape, hardened chunks of silly putty, a one-armed Steve Austin doll, random light bright pegs, a Vita Blue baseball glove, several torn and punctured Viewmaster reels, Evel Knievel mask from last Halloween. Checkers and marbles rattled to the bottom of the chest as I dug deeper until I found the yellow wiffle ball bat I stowed after the sewer sucked down the last of our wiffle balls. I held it aloft the way I imagined King Arthur lifted Excalibur, sliced the air with it like Zorro, and regarded it with an awe Luke Skywalker felt the first time he flipped on his lightsaber. Then the wheels started to turn. I ran to the kitchenette and emptied the junk drawer onto the Formica table, found electrical tape, and fetched the flashlight from under the sink. I emptied the flashlight's batteries, which rolled off the table onto the floor, and jammed the handle of the wiffle ball bat into the empty cylinder. Holding the two pieces tight under my arm, I taped them together with several revolutions of black tape. With first test, a gentle balestra and repouso, the wiffle ball bat wiggled inside the shaft of the flashlight, so more electrical tape went around and around. Vern, 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 Vern. My lightsaber sizzled. Use the force, Merc, I heard, while slipping the lightsaber into one of the bathrobe's belt loops, where it hung well. Your father's lightsaber, Alec Guinness's voice continued. This is the weapon of the Jedi Knight. I whipped it out. Vern, Vern, clutched the handle with both hands, tore through the apartment with a battle cry somewhere between a rebel yell and a screaming Indian. The pillows on Droopy's bed did not stand a chance. I whacked tubular crevices into paisley pillowcases. I dismembered a shirt from the corner clothes tree. Then I stabbed my sister's kiss poster right in Paul Stanley's star eye. But the backswing, when I went after Gene Simmons, sent Droopy's bedside lamp crashing to the floor. The complete swell of attack deflated by a broken light fixture. I ran back toward the kitchenette, hoping to find Elmer's glue among the junk drawer contents still strewn across the table, but a Darth Vader voice arose from the stairs. "Mercy sakes, what's all the racket up here?" my mother said. "What are you wearing?" An image focused like a projection on a pearlescent screen affixed to the inside of my skull. Mercury Withershins, rusty-haired and big-boned, splitting a woman's bathrobe slashed so that it fell between bottom of the shorts and the tops of tube socks, wielding a yellow plastic stick. Red glow on face did not emit from a lightsaber. I handed her the $4 change and felt guilty for bogarting the 50 cents. "This one was cheaper than the one you got." Why did you, I don't, she squeaked, half-blurt sentences like R2-D2. She tugged off an earring and massaged her earlobe. "I was just perfectly good robe ruined. It's like what I know what it's like. Should have never let Uncle Jules take you to that stupid movie. But save it, mister," she interrupted. "Lunch crowd is thinning. We'll talk about this later. Clean that mess in the kitchen and put my pinking shears back where you found them before you decide to alter the curtains." A sigh parted the staircase into which my mother disappeared. As soon as she left, I felt like the screaming ending well up inside me again. Shoulders straightened, chest puffed, eyes squinted. I leaned back and raised my lightsaber to my shoulder, poised like a Shaolin monk on Kung Fu theater. That summer, I vowed, the universe would shudder at the might of this knight. Suited up, armed, and possessed by a mission, I lacked one thing, a nemesis. That and the Elmer's glue to fix Joopy's busted lamp. Thank you. I really want to engage you in some really extended Q&A. Because I think, like Susan said, that's where the learning really happens. None. That's a great question, because writers often get that question. You know, how autobiographical is whatever you're working on? Obviously, you know, Merc is 13 in 1977. I was 10. So he's a bit older than I was in real life. I remember, of course, the Star Wars movie coming out, but I wasn't quite obsessed with it the way Merc is. I'll follow that question up with a comment that I made earlier in my opening remarks about the power of substituting a stand-in city or a stand-in neighborhood for a real place. The novel was originally set in Baltimore and originally set in Fells Point, and I was doing a lot of research, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and it dawned on me that I was doing more research than writing. So I was getting balled up in the very interesting research that I was doing. And probably one of two of the biggest breakthroughs that I had with the writing was when I decided to scrap Baltimore and substitute Patapsco City, which is a very thinly veiled version of Baltimore. That freed me up to do all kinds of things, both fun for myself, but also with the craft and with the plot lines and whatnot. So I still had, you might have noticed that the old Arabber who played in the Negro Leagues, he was wearing an Elite Gulls cap. And the Negro League's team in Baltimore was the Elite Giants. Well, one of them was. So Merc is a baseball fan, and he wears around a baseball cap all summer. It's not the Orioles, it's the Herons. So you've got like an angry-looking heron that looks very similar to the black and orange Oriole bird. You know, Quaker Cove. William Fell was a Quaker, so trying to be authentic to the neighborhood, but I wanted to sort of divorce myself from the burden that writing about a place specifically can create. I also had visions of, so it was actually stalling my creative process. I also then had visions of coming to a lovely reading like this and having less intelligent people than yourselves, some yahoos stand up and say, "Oh, Epstein's it wasn't called Epstein's, and it wasn't on that corner in 1977. You don't know what the hell you're talking about." So I didn't want to be burdened with that sort of, yeah, okay, I slipped up, or you know, it just really freed me up creatively to, you know, the old saw about truth being the lies that are truer than facts. And it really, I feel like I'm talking about a Baltimore that's a lot more authentic now, after renaming it Patapsco City or Pat City, and then like the beer that they say it's not Natty Bo, it's Patty Boy, right? So you got kind of give me a Patty Boy, you know, and there's just a whole marketing campaign. So you know, there are posters on the wall of like a one-eyed winking Patty Boy kind of cartoon. So I can be authentic with things that I know are genuinely Baltimore without being sort of burdened by I don't know, by Wikipedia, frankly. Now, this is an adult novel. The second breakthrough that I had with the process was, and don't ask me how this happened, but it dawned on me, and it felt so right, and it is so right, and when you read the whole novel, you'll get it. The story is being told from a 30-year-old merc in 1994 who is now transitioned to a woman who's a DJ named Mercy. So I've got, and I really don't go into the issues of being transgendered, but it's sort of underneath the surface of this summer being the summer that sends Merc on a journey that you don't see the details of it, but eventually leads to this moment. And what's happening is Mercy, the 30-year-old female DJ, is serving her last shift at the radio station before it changes format to like one of these, well, I think it's crappy like Jack FM kind of stuff that's like programmed to be identical across the country, and some guy in LA is pushing buttons. It's not a real radio station the way I remember radio stations and radio being. So you've got, you know, transitions, end of things, being caught between things. And of course, this Nixie character, who is the cousin who comes into town, is the catalyst behind the changes that happened in the summer of '77. That's the bulk of the novel. Happy accidents, often, right? Happy accidents. Remember the painter on PBS that would have an almighty stroke? Happy accidents, right? Now, it's art, right? So you sort of remain open to the possibility of happy accidents. I actually, if I notice too much rhyming or notice too much alliteration or things like that, I'm actually probably overly sensitive about it and try to avoid it. But that's a good observation. It's not done yet. So, this is, I started 2 years before my MFA, and then got 2 calendar years of working on it very hard for the MFA. And I've done a draft. But when you work on something big, like a marathon project, which is a novel as opposed to a sprint, short stories, not that short stories are easier, they're not, or poems are easier just because they're smaller, they're not. So now I've got this creature who is very tight and good and often revised in spaces, but then also very thin and weak and could break at any moment in places because I haven't given it as much time. So the next 6 months will be literally taking cement and a trowel and trying to fill in the gaps and smooth it all out, bulk it up, tighten it. I'm a big champion about economy, being very, very aware of everything, right down to the sentence level. And I think, you know, that's where the poetry serves me. Not that I'm trying to make something that's so incredibly lyrical from sentence to sentence, but I'm very cognizant of articles and words and making sentences as short and as powerful. Yeah, well, I hope so. I hope so. It just happens to be my sort of aesthetic. So I think that kind of training with the poetry does serve my prose. The storyline is essentially the same. What's happened is, and I enjoy naming characters. I try not to get too carried away by it. But Merc and Nixie, and what Merc becomes Mercy. They're a little loaded, those kind of names. And it did indeed start off with Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? Pretty standard names. And then Water, however you wish to say it. I say it in Baltimore, water. It plays a role. And the name Nixie, the word Nixie plays with, the etymology can be like neck, like bodies of water. You got harbors and coves and necks, like Holly Neck Road or whatever, along the water. So Nixie, and Nixie is also a derivation of a Norwegian water sprite, like a pixie. And she plays a kind of magical role in the story, and not to give away anything, but the water plays a role in her situation too. So I do a lot of that, but the revelation that oh my gosh, this is really a story that's being told in hindsight by a 30-year-old transgender DJ. Where the hell did that come from, right? But I just went with it, and it just works. It works so perfectly, and I'm not trying to make a political statement. I'm not trying to say anything about that experience. I know nothing about it, and I don't want to offend anybody into thinking that I do know about those issues. But it just works. It works so well. And I think Jen even mentioned one of the themes being between things. Between life and death and adulthood and adolescence, and you can even be between gender. You can be between those kind of things as well. So large chunks of it were deleted, but also then I had to have a mechanism for the telling from the perspective of the 30-year-old transgender DJ, and that's where there are scenes in the radio station booth. Right now there are 4, and I think that's a little bit too symmetrical, but it starts in the booth a quarter of the way. You flash back, you go back to the booth, and then as the time of her last shift it gets closer and closer to ending. Things happen within the booth, things happen to her, and it kind of also resets the story. So I've got right now these 4 moments actually a 5th moment at the end. But that's feeling very symmetrical, right, to me right now, which could work. But I'm wondering if it's too symmetrical. So, but now I've got those radio stations. So I had to write those, and I did a lot of that writing in the MFA. Well, it's too big, so there's a practical reason, and I don't feel competent right now anyway in really doing a deep dive into those issues. I've got transgendered friends that I could talk to, but I just don't think I am the person to write that story, but I think it serves the story well that this has happened. And that's not really the story I want to tell anyway. The story that I want to tell is the summer of 1977, where the things happened that were the catalyst to many things in this young person's life. Becoming a DJ. I don't want to give away too much, but this is also the summer. One of the things that they're fascinated with, in conjunction with the Star Wars theme, this is the summer that the Voyager probes launched. And on the Voyager, one of the things they had was this golden record that was an attempt to document all the ways you can say hello in human language, certain kinds of music. The rock and roll selection they picked was Chuck Berry. And so music, DJing, having a record that you exist, right? The whole idea behind the Voyager was like, let's send something up, just in case someone finds it, And by the time they find it, Earth has melted away. Or so it's just a document that, hey, I existed. We all have that kind of, that drive, right? You want to make a mark. That's why I think that's why there's art, right? We want to make a mark. We want to sort of have an opinion, contribute to the broader cultural conversation of humanity, but also say, hey, I was here. I was here once. So that fascination leads, one of the things they do during the summer is they record a sort of a mixtape with music and their thoughts, their ruminations, and they make this tape and they put it in a, not an Old Bay can, but a thing of Old Bay can like spice that's empty, and seal it all up and chuck it into the river, right? And just in hopes that someone finds it someday. Just like the way they, you know, who knows who might find the Voyager probes one day. And what happens is that in 1994 is what happened to the Voyager probe. It was something called termination shock. And termination shock is when this probe hit what we think is the end of the universe as we know it, and it may have, you know, slowed down. It might have gone through a wormhole. You know, who knows what? It's still theoretically going and sending signals back. So I was playing with that termination shock and what the shock of her last shift might be in her termination, and thinking about terminal things. And that's a perfect segue back to that pivotal summer in which not only her catalyst started, but the Voyager stuff started. So I'm trying to like bring kind of shit like that in too, with a lot of the, like cultural references and whatnot. And I said, someone asked how long I've been working on it. I don't know. I can't answer that so easily, as I know when it's got to be done. And this is where the publisher is talking. If this book is not published in 2017, no one's going to want it, because I got to totally leverage all this 40th anniversary nostalgia stuff that you just know is going to be all over the place 2 years from now. So I got to bust my ass and finish this thing and get my agent to take it and sell it. And what's that?
You can always go 10 years after that.
Yeah, right. And maybe then Susan can invite me back again when I'm 60. So yeah, so I feel a pressure. I feel like I'm marketing. As from my publishing perspective, the publishing side of I feel like this pressure. Like, man, if I don't finish this spring, because I know the timetable it takes to get a book published, at least traditionally these days, you got to convince the agent that it's good. And of course, the agent's going to say, well, you got to fix this something. I mean, where did this 30-year-old transgendered character come from? What's that all about? And so, no, then you have to make your case. You're ultimately going to have to do edits. Then he's going to, or she's going to have to turn around and sell it to an editor. And then it's not going to see the light of day for, it could be 2 years. It could take 2 years. That is, if I'm lucky enough to get an agent working on it and trying to shop it around in the summer of 2015. So knowing that, I've got this like unfair, you know, I wake up at night, oh, I should be writing. Yeah, my writer's block is called Maddie and Sonia, 4 and 2. I haven't experienced that lately because the MFA experience was really cracking the whip. Really, you know, monthly deadlines, quotas, in addition to all the reading and annotations and all the other stuff that you have to do to earn the degree. And then now, you know, I'll do anything to procrastinate. You know, curse these things, right? Curse the interwebs, right? Curse the little things you get on Facebook that says, you know, 10 Hollywood stars with weird body parts. Look at them now. It's like, oh man, that's 5 minutes I could have been writing. And it's checking, you know, trying to see what, you know, Kim Kardashian's up to and stuff like that. You know, there's so much, you know, so I'm really disciplined now, especially because at night and in the mornings I'm dad. So I sneak a little bit at lunch. I also don't beat myself up. A lot of people are like, oh man, you just looked at, you know, you just looked at Kim Kardashian's backside for 3 minutes, you know? It's okay, you know, it's okay to waste time. It's okay to, you know, take a break. because writing is hard, right? And by day I'm a marketing person, so I'm always writing and looking at a computer and communicating in various ways. So I've learned to be more disciplined, take advantage of the gift of time when it comes, and it often comes at 5 in the morning and sometimes 3 in the morning, because I'm wiped. By the end of the day with the kids, I'm in bed like by 9, no doubt. So I get maybe a good 5 hours. But then at 2, I'm feeling pretty good. And it's not that hard to get up and maybe work for an hour. But I also don't, beat myself up the way I used to. But that said, I'm a big proponent for discipline, and there's got to be some certain modicum of discipline, just for any art, just to get the work done. I think that puts the value of the artistic work at jeopardy when you start thinking about whether you're a musician or a visual artist or a dancer or a writer. That's dangerous territory, I think, to be in. That said, one of the things I've recently gained appreciation for is not so much tailoring the way I write to satisfy an audience, but to appreciate and respect what a reader brings to the way he or she engages your writing. That's something I never really thought about much before until relatively recently. And not only does that make the dynamic between writer and reader, which is often goes unobserved, right? Because of all the, it's one of my favorites, of all the creative arts, right? It's the literary arts that are predominantly done in solitude, writing, and consumed or engaged with in solitude, reading. And that's a stinky way to develop a culture. I want people, I want people around. I want to be collaborative. I want to share stuff. So how do you think about respecting the reader and what he or she brings to the table when they engage your text? That's a different question, I think, than tailoring your writing to satisfy a readership. And it also helps, I think, your craft, because what happens is, even if you're writing in third-person omniscient, and it's because you like to be God, you like to control that entire universe that is your story, that often tends to lead to overwriting. And because you're not taking into consideration what that reader might bring to the text and allow them to paint that picture in their mind's eye. The complete opposite end of that scale from novels or for long-form prose is screenwriting or playwriting, in which there are no additional details or exposition, or there might be a few directional bits, but the screenwriter knows going in that a director is going to take that text and interpret it in any given number of ways. And then the next director of the same text is probably going to interpret it a very different way than the first. So that screenwriter is unburdened by colors of leaves and trees and what the noise makes when it blows through the branches and things. Stuff that I think prose writers dig very much, and poets dig very much. But you know that people are bringing their own interpretations to the text. So you sort of having a respect for that is the way I've changed, and not tailoring the writing so much. That's why I do it. That's the motivation to do it in the first place, because you don't know what's going to happen. There is you right into the darkness, right into the unknown. Be brave with it, own it. I certainly did not know that the character was going to go in the direction that she eventually goes in the course of my story. But I think if you write there's argument, do you outline or not? Do you outline? Do you not outline? And I tend to almost like storybook. I've got an idea of where I'm going to go, but I don't outline because I don't want to be sort of hemmed in by an outline. Because when the surprise happens to you as the creator of a piece of writing, you stand a pretty good chance of that surprise then happening in the consumer of that writing, the reader. So if you're surprising yourself, you feel like maybe you're on the right track to surprise the reader, and that's the trick. That's the trick, to keep them engaged and to turn the page. Oh, my favorite book is something called A Confederacy of Dunces. I try to read that every summer. This is a book by John Kennedy Toole, written in 1967, published by a university press, but this crazy, wacky character, kind of almost a frumpier, older version of Merck, if Merck didn't go in his particular, he sort of wears this crazy green cap as flaps, and he's all disheveled, he's eating hot dogs all the time. Set in New Orleans in the, I guess, I don't know if it's set in the 50s or 60s. Not only do it's the only book the author ever wrote, because shortly thereafter, unfortunately, he committed suicide. And his mom then went to another famous New Orleans writer and had that person kind of lobby to get it recognized and I guess maybe even published in the first place. And it went on to, I think, win one of the few posthumously awarded Pulitzer Prizes in the country. And it's just a perennial bestseller now. And it's just, the characters are weird, but yet very relatable. Does anybody know that book? A Confederacy of Dunces? Yeah. I tend to like Southern lit in general. Flannery O'Connor would come in general. That's the only book this particular writer, no, this writer did write. Did he write another book? Did he write, I can't remember. I think they found a manuscript after his death. I want to call it Neon Bible, but that doesn't seem to ring a bell. But anyway, it's far inferior. And so like Walker Percy, Flannery O'Connor, Randall Keenan, people that, because I think that I'm a big fan of place and creating a sense of place, whether it's a real Baltimore city or a made-up Patapsco city. And you tend to have things like family and weird things and corruption and the grotesque and a lot of baggage, obviously, with things Southern. Well, I would never discourage anyone from eliminating plot points or not endeavoring to be ambitious, I think is what I'm saying. That said, I think for newer writers, younger writers, writers just trying to find their voice and their stride, keeping it simple might have its advantages. I think if you're questioning a plot point's value to the overall narrative, you're already making a statement of some sort. And an astute editor, when they read the final product, will sense that. Will sense that. It seems like you're struggling here. What's going on? Is this important? But sometimes you just, you bang. I mean, writing is just like any other art. You just keep, whacking away with it with a mallet and seeing if it, until it. Sometimes it's a mallet, sometimes it's a feather, right? So. Another great question, another fabulous question. I didn't. I failed at that. And my mentor, one of my mentors at the University of Tampa said, stop it. Stop it with the lists. We get it. 3, maybe 4, not every paragraph. You're painting the picture. It's great. But you don't, Noxzema, light bright, I don't know, I can't think of anything. It's like, so I actually, so the answer to your question is, and I believe this is very, very important, is find a trusted small group of peers with whom you can share your work. Not your sister, not your boyfriend or girlfriend, not your mom, not your aunt. People who you trust will give you an authentic and honest, yet constructive feedback. And that's what happened. I mean, not only was my mentor saying that kind of, providing that kind of commentary, but so with other people in my small group that I was reading. So, in an MFA program, you go through, like, maybe there's 5 writers, 1 mentor, and you spend the semester together. So you're reading everybody else's stuff. At least when you go to the residency and you spend 2 weeks with these people. So you're getting really good feedback from not only the professors, but your peer artists. And they would all say, just, this is great stuff, but just, dial it back a notch, and not every paragraph. In fact, reading that, I was remembering those comments, and I was like, it's feeling a little listy here again, I don't have to name every product circa 1977 to convey the idea that this is the time and place where it's set. So that was a really astute observation, though. I think what's important, two things that I think it's important that people your generation and maybe the next generation coming up after you learn a tolerance for long-form reading and understand the benefits of reading printed material in a book as an artifact. I mean, the studies show that reading a book that's not illuminated from the back, like a screen is, but illuminated from, there's a fancy word for it, but illuminated this way, it has different cognitive and brain empowering effects. So I think part of what I'm seeing is sort of culturally is like, a couple years ago, people were saying, well, the book is dead, no one's reading. It's not that no one's reading, it's that we're reading differently. E-books have grown so much that the New York Times, as recently as just last August of 2013, they finally broke down and have started listing e-book sales as being legitimate, the New York Times bestseller list contending sales, e-books. And I purchased lots of e-books, but it's a different experience, as you all well know, both tactically and I think emotionally. Even all your senses really get involved with a book. I think, given how much time we're pressed for in general, I think people are demanding that the quality of the writing, whether it be in short bursts, like the advent of short fiction or flash fiction or things like that, or God forbid the resurrection or not the renaissance of poetry. Not that poetry ever went away, but poetry or short stories. There's another. For a long time, publishers would say, "Oh, short stories, can't sell short stories. No one wants short stories." Now people, I think, do, because it's a way that at least they trick themselves into thinking, "Hey, I've got a half an hour. I can't read a novel, but I'll read a short story. But that short story better be good. Better be good," because the mentality's gone from, "Man, I just wasted half an hour on that stupid story," to, "I just wasted a half an hour on that story." So your quality, I think that puts the onus on us as artists to really step our game up. Step our game up. Regardless if you're going for a marathon, long-form writing project or a short story or flash fiction or poetry or whatever, just really step that content quality up. First question, no, it's not my only job. My 9-to-5 job, I do marketing and student enrollment at MICA, the art college in Baltimore. So that's my day job. I run City Lit, as Jen mentioned. I don't know, I've got a great board of directors. The founding chairperson of City Lit's board of directors, Chick Dombach, is here in the audience. He lives in Crownsville. And I've got a great board of directors who roll up their sleeves and help me get work done with the nonprofit. We publish books, and that's pretty much a me endeavor, pretty much working with friends on editing and designing books and printing and publishing books. Not my own work, the work of other writers. And there's not a heck of a lot of money in that. Now, I'm pleased and honored and flattered to have just won an award, which is probably more money than I will ever see from royalties or sales of books, I dare say. It was a nice prize, but I'm not going to buy a new car with it or anything. So the money picture is, but here's how geeky I am. I was streaming the National Book Awards last night, because I'm stupid. And who knows Ursula K. Le Guin? Fabulous science fiction and fantasy writer who's 85, I think. She's been doing it forever. She gave a home run speech last night. And the gist of it, one of the many nuggets of wisdom that came from it, is that she was talking a lot about Amazon and the commodification of art, in particular our art, literary art. And she was like, we are the torchbearers for that art. everybody in that room, in this room, is the torchbearer for that art, because we're the only ones that realize there's value in the art in and of itself. And that's where we need to find our reward. And the other particularly American thing that she said was that our reward is our ability, the freedom to make this art in this country, where other artists, both visual, musical, and literary artists in other countries, in other political situations, they don't have this freedom. So sort of value that freedom that we have to write about anything we want to write about. And I thought that was just really, really cool. Because Amazon is, as a publisher, I use Amazon. The books that I publish for the benefit of my authors are on Amazon. But the thought of Amazon, which now is publishing original content and actually stole a lot of editors away from New York publishing houses, it's kind of George Orwellian. It's a little scary. But in one of the classes I taught about a year ago, I read the first page of a brand new smashing book that was hotter than hell, and it was crap. It was the first page from 50 Shades of Grey. It's like, and who's to say, that I forget the author's name, but she's pocketing some coin, right? But that's not the path that I've opted to go on, and that's not the path that I try to endorse other young writers and to go on either. I do think if you're true to your own art, you will find an audience, and you will be compensated in many different ways, including financially, but stay true to what you like to write.